the best thing that anyone can say to me is, we've got you because we really like what you do. Now do what you do.
Yeah.
And that's it. If someone sends me, a spreadsheet of images they want, then that makes me anxious.
The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will.
Welcome to Perspective, a podcast for wedding craves, where we sit down often with a special guest and talk about our many years of experience in the wedding industry so that you can learn from us and to help grow your wedding business. We're talking to internationally acclaimed wedding photographer Nick Tucker on today's episode. This dapper gentleman has gone from struggling writer to one of the best wedding photographers in London, with his work appearing in such publications as Hitched and Vogue. And even though Nick's work does take him, as far afield as Australia and Hong Kong, it seems less about the places and more about the people. I'm going to quote Nick's Instagram here. In his bio, he writes, "I have photographed John Taylor, Roger Taylor, an actual Taylor, Little Mix, and puppet William Blake." Now, I actually had to look that last one up because I had no idea who that was, but it's cool. We're going to be talking to Nick about his journey that led him into his journalistic editorial style, including how and when he uses Flash and so much more. So, keep around. Keep around, stick around. This episode is, of course, sponsored by With Jack and for a limited time by 210 Co. But I'll go into that a little bit later in the show. However, Greg, what are we drinking?
We are drinking a massive bag of coffee called Test Roast, which is from Hardlines. And I thought it was quite interesting when they released it because it's like their actual test roasts.
Oh, right.
They just decided to sell them. So they could be crap, they could be good, who knows?
And for noobs out there who aren't into coffee, what is a test roast?
Where they just get like a small batch of beans and roast them to perfect the sort of flavours and stuff.
Yeah, they tweak the nuance of the flavours, right?
Get this poured. I've been drinking it in the office all week, so I know I like it.
Oh,
but
wonderful.
Let's see what you think.
Wonderful. And we have with us today, Nick. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. It's been, it will be our pleasure, hopefully, at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, let's hope so. Could all go horribly wrong.
Yeah. So, what have you been up to?
Lately, well, it's the downtime. It's the winter season right now. So,
oh yeah.
I've been up to almost nothing. I've just been sitting at home reading, basically, which is kind of ideal.
Oh, okay. What kind of stuff do you tend to read on a casual basis? Assuming it is a casual enjoyment and not scholarly education that you're setting yourself up for.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, it's not. I'm not training for anything, but it's just a kind of a wide area of neuroscience. A lot at the moment, memoirs, just random shit that kind of like leads on from the last book, really.
Very cool.
It looks like there's a pretty good selection behind you.
Yeah, there's quite a fairly big shelf, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Is this like your house hub? Is this where you like to go to just chill out and relax, or is this more a working space for you? This
is kind of the office / library. This one. So yeah, I do my work in here. Top shelf is fiction, non-fiction, and then the larger shelves at the bottom are all photography books. Oh yeah, very cool. My wife's actually an avid reader. I am less so. I'll more listen to audiobooks or YouTube. Yeah. But my wife, I think she's read about 9 books last month. 9 books. Wow. I mean, that surely comes under the category of like a superpower. Surely,
while having 3 kids as well.
Well, yes, while having 3 kids.
That is impressive.
That is very impressive. Yeah, but she reads a lot of this kind of fantasy, fiction, non-fiction, fantasy. I don't know, something with loads of beasts and romance and things like
probably
this.
Not non-fiction. Let's hope not. Anyway.
Yes. But yeah, have you been reading anything, Greg?
No,
You may-
no. What was it? I'm audiobook more so when I'm driving as well. I think what the last one I just finished was.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of audiobooks as well. And I really enjoy that. That's kind of just great for sort of lying down or doing something else. But I kind of, you can't beat turning a page. I don't think. I just really like the physicality of the book in your hand.
Yeah. And I mean, we've touched on this before on the show, but I have this superpower of smell. I love the smell of books.
Yeah.
You know? There's something...
It's not a superpower. It's just the fact that I don't have a sense of smell. Everybody else does have it. Everybody else has that superpower that you're talking about.
Hey, when I caught COVID, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be my kryptonite. I'm going to be affected. Yeah. I'm going to be absolutely useless now. Because I judge everything important in my life is smell based. Oh, the coffee smells amazing. How is the coffee smelling, Greg?
Don't know.
Oh my god. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. You know, it's funny. You mentioned this is the quiet season usually. We got off to a bit of a bang, didn't we, Greg?
Yeah, early start with first wedding on the 15th of January.
15th of January. It was a very large wedding.
Nice.
Well, it was, I mean, how many maybe 45 guests?
Yeah, less than 50.
Yeah, but there seemed to, in fact, I know there were more suppliers on hand at the wedding than actual guests. It was massive.
Wow.
Dancers and bands and all sorts of cool things to film. So,
they had at least, they had two 15-piece bands, and they had other performers throughout the day as well. So there was at least one performer for every guest there.
Yeah.
It was mental.
Wow.
It was quite bizarre. That was at Glen Eagles. Yeah. We've shot there a couple of times, but probably nothing to this scale and production-wise. But it is funny because we're kind of known for doing a lot of elopements and kind of smaller weddings. It was always nice to flex that big wedding skill.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they are different. They're the same, aren't they? But they're different at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like there's more expectations with a bigger wedding.
Sometimes, yeah.
But
I think there's more expectation, but they actually can be, I think, less pressure in that there's so much going on. There's such a variety of photos. It's the smaller weddings that can sometimes be more stressful for me if it's just 4 people and you need to get 3 or 4 hours worth of interesting, varied photos from the same 4 people.
Yes, you're just shooting a whole load of details. Lots of hands, some feet.
Walking past you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're absolutely right, actually. And I mean, there weren't any speeches at this wedding.
Yeah.
So, like, any of the big high pressure moments weren't really there.
Yeah.
So it was very strange.
Yeah, it was a really big production for a wedding, but as you say, the elements where as a filmmaker you're like, okay, this is stressful. We've got to get good audio, good video to be able to tell the story. Yeah. For the speeches, it was gone. So it was like after the ceremony, it was just sort of, just capture what's happening, just
chilling,
get the moments. Yeah.
And we were working with a photographer who was actually trying out. Now, am I right in saying this, Greg? He was trying out a new style. And
sort of.
And funnily enough, it's kind of like your kind of like editorial style. There's a lot of flash. We did a lot of outside work, as if they were arriving at the venue, and it was kind of like paparazzi kind of vibe.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was super
for the whole day.
For the whole day.
Right.
And he seemed to really enjoy it, and I really enjoyed the look of the images. And obviously, going through your profile, there's something about I don't exactly know what it is, and we'll talk more about your work a little bit later. But I don't know what it is about it. If it's more of it just feels a little bit more candid, or there's almost something old school about a direct flash. You know?
Yeah, there is.
And I am a videographer, so I'm not a photographer. So if I'm dumbing down terminology, please do
I'm
correct
completely
me.
technically inept, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Awesome. That's pretty much us as well.
The photographer at this Gleneagles wedding, was the couple had sort of said they wanted that 1920s Hollywood vibe and American jazz bar. So his interpretation of that was to go with that high flash type look. And yeah, it was working well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. It does have that. You know, I mean, if you're doing a direct flash, but you're controlling it. Obviously, you're not blasting people. But the direct flash is how they would have, shot with the old-fashioned cameras and the bulbs exploding on top of them in the 40s and 50s for those kind of club shots. So that's my touchstone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if people are out there thinking, "Oh, a videographer working with a photographer that has a lot of flash. I wonder how that was." And you know what? It was absolutely fine.
Was it?
I really enjoyed it.
So yeah, and most weddings, it's like, it interferes, like it takes you out of the moment of the visuals when you're watching a film, when you see a flash go off. But this couple, we were like, well, let's just lean into it and embrace the flash because they wanted that style of look. So,
I mean, for the most part,
what does it do on video? Does it sort of strobe for you a bit if it's too much, or?
Yeah, you tend to get like this kind of like band of white flash on any section of the screen, but it's never like a full. I suppose it would be less noticeable if it was just a full one white frame. But it's not. It's like that very
because
strange
of the
band.
shutter speed and stuff. It's half the screen goes white, half just changes color slightly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for the most part, you can cut around it as well. But for the moments that you can, you just go with it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people worry about with working alongside photographers that have flash and stuff, but it's really not too bad as long as you embrace it.
I guess really it's the expectations of the couple, isn't it? If they've asked for that style, then you're safe at yourself knowing that you're kind of recording the style that they asked for.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
Yeah. I actually made a friend that wedding. What did she call me? Her Paisley pal? Her Paisley pal, because I was wearing a lot of...
Paisley, you're from Paisley.
Oh, no. I did study in Paisley, but my goodness. I wasn't actually wearing Paisley, but I was wearing a very busy floral shirt. So,
okay, nice.
Yeah, but she was Paisley all over the place. Yeah, but you wear Paisley as well, don't you?
I wear a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, most of the images I see you online, even the one that you sent over for our social media had Paisley on. I was like, yes, I like that style. It's good.
But tell us a bit more about that line from your Instagram bio that Simon quoted, the John Taylor, Roger Taylor, and so on.
An actual Taylor.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's just, when you photograph so many random things, it's hard to, compress it into a little blurb. So, I photographed John Taylor of Duran Duran, sort of a party for him. Twice I photographed Roger Taylor's kids' 21st birthday parties. Back in the day, I photographed New and Lingwood, which is an very old tailor on Jermyn Street in London. And then randomly Little Mix, and then even more randomly, I shot some photos for John Higgs, who's an amazing author, and he'd just written a book on William Blake and what William Blake means now, which is an extraordinary book. He also wrote a really good book about the KLF, which I thoroughly recommend. But yeah, he'd had a puppet, William Blake, made for his sort of promotional tour of the book. But puppet makers being, I guess, an even more eccentric wing of the creative, creative arts, the puppet wasn't ready in time for the promotional tour. So we just ended up randomly going around Brighton, shooting him with his Blake puppet for no real reason.
It was that. I mean, that sounds like a pretty strange shoot to have, but pretty cool. I imagine.
It was a strange shoot, except for that it took place in Brighton, and everyone just walked past, going, "Yeah, it's Brighton, isn't it? That's what happens here."
That's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you have like mock poses for the puppet?
Well, the puppet posed as much as it could be stopped from falling over. I guess like a baby shoot, basically.
Yeah.
It was a fairly floppy puppet, so it wasn't a wide range of poses it could do, but we got there.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm not sure if you know this individual. He's a YouTuber. He's been on the podcast before. His name's Eric Floberg. And he made a interesting video recently about how constant stimulus from like media was ruining his creativity. And I think the focus was like his phone or his TV or whatever it was. And basically alluded to essentially being bored lets your mind be creative.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I can't even remember the last time I was bored and allowed myself to be creative.
I think that's absolutely true. It's completely true. I think they are. You know, there are studies now that really show that boredom is fundamental to the creative process, because the brain isn't preoccupied. It's not engaged with something else. It has to make its own entertainment, which is where creativity comes from. And I do worry that increasingly that's not a go-to place for the brain, because we can always be on our phones, at least, if not our computers, if not any number of channels on TV or YouTube. I do think where ideas germinate is through want of nothing better to do, seemingly, until you kind of go, oh, okay, wow, this is important. So I completely agree with him. Yeah.
I suppose on a side note, do you think everyone has that creative ability? I suppose maybe they do, but maybe in their own ways. Like if I was going to be creative, I would start thinking about, what kind of video could I do? How could I write something? How could I, create things? Yeah. Maybe not everyone's like that, but
I do think everyone is creative, and I think it's often taught out of people at school. If you think, all kids paint and draw and kind of create, fantasy stories to play out and stuff like that. So I think we are all creative. It's just how well some of us navigate a school system that effectively requires you to be round pegs in a round hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's sort of references to the fact that when a child's left on their own, they will just draw random things with no fear, and they don't have any fear of judgment. Whereas when you get to a certain age, adults start to think, people think this or people feel that if I draw this randle thing.
Yeah, is that good enough? Is that giving part of me away? Does that live up to some kind of actually meaningless objective standard? If you are doing it, if you're creating for yourself. I mean, I used to write. I still try and write, but that was what I was doing before being a photographer. And things got close, but I had small bits and pieces published, but never the novels that I wrote. But I kind of, at this point now, I'm kind of think, well, does it matter that they didn't get published? It wouldn't change the object, and it wouldn't change what it sort of did for me in terms of focusing sort of attention and ideas. So really that external gauge, I think, is less important than we make it out to be.
Yeah. Would you ever consider like self-publishing?
Yep, I think I would. I've kind of thought about that with the photography, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm slightly old-fashioned in that I'd always kind of quite like the idea of being validated by a big publishing house. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no. If I wrote something and I was like, this is amazing, why is no one publishing it? Then maybe, yeah. I would. I think there isn't a stigma about that anymore. There's increasingly it is the way to bypass a very sort of kind of mired bureaucratic system. So yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hopefully in the future we'll see some publications of yours.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So before we move on, I just want to do a little Patreon thing for our listeners. Do you want more perspective content? If so, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/perspective by Cinemate. You can sign up for as little as £1 and you can support the podcast. So please come and support us. However, let's move on.
So, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Sorry, let's say it again. Who am I?
The big question. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, who am I is a bigger question than we've got time for, I think. Does anyone know who they are? I'm a photographer. My name's Nick Tucker. I'm a photographer specialising in events. I try not to say wedding photographer, A, because it is broader than that, and B, because I think that comes loaded with a certain set of pre-expectations, which I try and avoid.
I don't think anyone knows who they are. You're right.
Yeah. We change from day to day, moment to moment, don't we?
Yeah, I love it when guests go all kind of out there with that answer. So some guests just play it. Hey, I'm a photographer. I live here. I do this and that, and I'm this and that. But yeah, quite often I'm left pondering life. Sometimes at weddings, I would just be like, Greg, do you ever think like we're alone? Do you think there's aliens and civilizations? And honestly, it goes far beyond the realm of space with me sometimes. Yeah. So I'm sorry, Greg. I'm sorry.
Well, and what's your answer? Are we alone?
Yeah, are we?
Well, there's no evidence yet, but I would say that the odds are slim that we are alone.
Yeah,
but there's no proof. So, yeah, I'm not going to say for sure. But yeah.
But no evidence is not evidence of nothing.
There's no evidence of nothing, and who knows?
Right, back on track.
I'm sorry.
So a few moments ago, you mentioned about your previous life as a writer. So tell us a bit more about that and how that then transpired into photography.
Yeah, so I think the link between the writer being writing this is the storytelling, and is looking for those moments which we I think people are starting to more and more say the moments between the moments, but actually the moments between the moments are still the moments. And you're always looking for something that reflects the day in an image as much as you can. And I think that's what writing does. That's what creating a character or a scene does. Is it aims for a bigger truth, which is what we do as photographers and I guess videographers as well.
You are probably going to get asked this all the time, or at least asked to tell the story, but you were a writer for the artist Banksy back when you were a struggling writer.
I was a struggling writer apart from the very brief window where I wrote for Banksy, and that was quite a nice job. It all came about because I was buying Banksy prints, and they were quite they're based in East London. They weren't the enterprise they are now. They were sort of smaller and more ramshackle.
Yeah.
And the prints would often arrive dented because they sent them out in cheap, shitty tubes. So I kind of got to know Steph, the girl there, just through correspondence, returning prints. And at some point she kind of said, "Oh, you're a writer. Would you fancy writing for us?" So I ended up writing their sort of like semi-regular newsletter. I guess it would come out once a month, once every 2 months. And my job was to be professionally sarcastic for Banksy, basically. Which was, it was good fun. The next question people always ask is, did you meet him? And I don't know. It was already quite a sort of, they were all quite guarded by that point. He was already, Banksy. And so there was an inner circle and an outer circle. And as far as I know, I only ever got as far as the outer circle.
Yeah. I'm assuming that Banksy isn't just one individual, right?
I mean, he is one individual, but it's a collect. In terms of, I think the image making, it's one guy. But in terms of, I mean, the entire thing, it's a collective of about 10 people, and certainly I don't think Banksy probably hasn't put up any of his own graffiti on the walls for 10 or 15 years now. Yeah. It's sort of it's the team that goes out and does it. A bit like Damien Hirst doesn't paint his own paintings.
Yeah. Now that you're that part is you're out of the outer circle. Do you still keep up with what Banksy the artist is doing, the group or the individual?
I don't, mostly because I sold all but one of the prints that I have, and seeing how much they go for these days is just too painful to keep up with. So I put my head down and pretend that never happened.
Yes, yeah. I always enjoy when I see stories on social media where a mural, a piece of art is being placed on a wall, and the building's owned by a specific individual, and he's just come and just removed the wall and just sold the piece. I'm like, is
that in the spirit of things, guys? Yeah.
It's certainly not in the spirit of things.
I mean, people have had garage doors and things like that removed in the middle of the night because it's got a Banksy on it. Yeah,
it's quite bizarre. I don't know if I can blame the individuals. It's a tough world out there for a lot of people, but
it is a tough world, and it does go for good money, and why not?
I suppose once it's been removed and sold, like if it was just to remain on the wall, I suppose time would just take it away slowly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much any council these days, once it realises it has a Banksy, just puts a Perspex box around it and makes it a tourist attraction.
Right.
So
see that is I like that. That's cool. You're keeping it safe, but you're still keeping it in the public eye. That's cool. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on from Banksy, because I could probably talk about that for the whole episode, but we're not here for that. Were you doing photography on the side as like a hobby? When you were in that kind of writing phase, or like when did photography come into your life?
Well, I did it badly at A-level back in the day, and I could dig out some photos from back then, and you would be like, I wouldn't do that as a career if I were you. That seems like a very bad idea, because they all very A-level kind of photography-ish kind of stuff of close-ups of bicycle spokes and shadows, and it was awful mostly. Although I did kind of do a bit of portraiture with that, and I know, which I really enjoyed looking back on it. Then what was the trajectory? But then I just kind of like I went when I went traveling, as you do after uni, took a camera, really enjoyed that. But then post that, I don't think I actually owned a camera for about 10 years. So it was never really on the horizon as an alternative career route. And I forgot that I enjoyed it. for a long time. It was
Yeah.
It was working in street art. I was working for once the Banksy thing stopped, I started working for a rival street art gallery. And at one point, I was just given, they bought a camera to document, they would have, their shows were sort of pop-up shows of other graffiti artists. And so I was given a camera and I photographed opening nights and the artists going around London, putting their art up on, random Hackney walls. And that kind of reminded me that I actually did enjoy this, that, this could be something.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
What was the rival gallery?
It's called Black Rat Press. It's not going in that form anymore. I think it's Black Rat Projects now. But yeah, it was kind of at that time when the Banksy explosion happened. People who normally weren't into art got into art, and a lot of them got into art. Let's be honest, because you could buy a Banksy, in the morning and sell it for 5-10 times that price in the evening. So it made it was kind of art appreciation / entrepreneurial kind of enterprise for lots of people. But I do think it gave, I don't love Banksy's art, but what I do think he's kind of like the J.K. Rowling of the art scene. Whereas, the Harry Potter books got lots of kids into reading that, perhaps they wouldn't have done otherwise. And I do think Banksy has got lots of people into art who may have otherwise not had that interest.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned that you don't use the words wedding photographer to sort of talk about what you do and stuff because it's bigger than that and does sort of take in more facets of the sort of industry.
I mean, I will use that word if someone asks me to shoot their wedding.
Yeah, of course. But you've also got quite an extensive sort of fashion portfolio, street portfolio. So where, for all of your sort of photography, wedding, fashion, street, where does your influences come from then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they come from, I guess, all over the place. I've got book, I've got, fashion photography books, street photography books, portraiture. I think there is no one clear, influence for an overall aesthetic. Although, I guess in terms of Flash, which we may come on to later, as soon as I discovered Larry Fink, I was like, this is what I want to do in the evenings with my photography. He was a New York photographer, kind of like 60s, 70s, 80s, kind of, he's shot a lot of celebrity work, a lot of high-end parties, and he shoots with, L-bracketed flash that is more or less direct. And, it's just that kind of, that punchy, old school, just I think it's simple and difficult, that style, because you don't want to blast you don't want to blast the room. You still want kind of like the drama of light and shadow.
Interesting.
I think I didn't answer.
I know what you mean.
I can't remember.
No, yeah, you did. It's interesting because we use. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but we will use a handheld light and like we will kind of hold it in our hands while we're shooting to kind of get that kind of direct light vibe. Very good for like parties. I would obviously never do it during the day. It probably wouldn't look very good. But at parties, I think it's great. But there's a moment where you overdo it and you go from like this to this. And it's not good. So yeah. I'm going to be asking you a little bit later again in the podcast about how you use Flash, but going back to the street influences, what other street influences? What other street influences do you have for people who want to try get into Flash and see what kind of styles are out there, who would you recommend they go look at the work of first?
For street, we're talking about.
Well, street or fashion, I think both styles
Yeah.
suit quite well weddings. Yeah.
For fashion, there's, you can. I suppose it is fashion and it's not fashion. There's a female photographer, Californian, that I really love called Alex Prager. And her thing is a mix of. It's almost like her stuff almost looks like a still from a David Lynch movie. It's quite stylized. It's quite maybe there's a Hitchcockian element to it. It's sort of using wigs and styles of dress now to look more sort of 50s and 60s. She's amazing.
Did she do an image in like a plane? Is that her? No, I'm trying to remember.
They were images. I think there's a couple of images where she's got planes flying overhead of a model, but I'm not sure in planes. But yeah, maybe. I've just got my laptop here, so I'm just having a quick gander here. I do recognize some of these images. The movie theater in particular. Yeah, I do remember. I think. I think she's gone from shooting Friends to sort of like really big productions where Jessica Chastain and George Clooney are part of the crowd.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. I remember finding her work, and it was because she sets up everything as like a big production. And I remember being really interested in that because obviously as wedding photographers, we do styled shoots sometimes, but we don't have like the grandeur of a big setup. I was really drawn to her work maybe early last year. I love her style of work. Let's get back to you though. So you started doing weddings. And I think many of our guests and many people that we know who are wedding photographers, they started with their friend's wedding. So tell us more about that. Pretty much that. The first wedding I was asked to do, I'd just been taking photos and putting them up on Flickr because Flickr was the thing back in the day. Flickr.
God. And someone came along and said, would you shoot our wedding? And I was like, hell no, that's way too much pressure. But I was also invited as a guest. Uh-huh. So I went along, and I think I was one of those, annoying guests with a professional level camera who kind of like shot stuff and, hopefully didn't get in the photographer's way too much. Probably did because he was an arsehole. But when I showed them the photos that I'd taken on the day, they said that they preferred them to the guy they paid £3,000 or £4,000 for. Whether or not that was true, and they were just kind of like being nice about my photos, I chose to believe it. And I think pretty much the next time I did a wedding, I charged for it. I didn't do too much, apprenticing. Mm-hmm. I think I assisted on 2 weddings, and then was like, "Yeah, I'm a wedding photographer. Let's crack on."
Yeah. When would that have been? Like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even as late as that?
10 or 11 years ago.
Okay. Quite a similar time to us, actually. Yeah. We had a very similar approach. Yeah. We shot when the gay wedding that we shot at the start. Was that the very first wedding, Greg?
Yeah. Yeah, it was our first wedding was a proper booking.
So we actually did charge for the first wedding.
It was through a friend of a friend.
Wow, nice.
It was a proper booking, yeah.
But it was early days. We didn't really know what we were doing, and it was just a case of yep, we're wedding filmmakers now. That's what we do.
So what was your background then? How were you in a position to be asked to be doing it?
Well, Greg and I studied music technology in Paisley.
The whole time. Just walked around studying, wearing Paisley.
We were in Paisley, wearing Paisley. It was awful. No, I think bad things happen to you if you wear Paisley in Paisley. But anyway, we did our masters, and our final project was it could be kind of anything really. It was a very wide open course, but we both ended up doing sort of like this music, live music, photography kind of
like mixed
project.
multimedia.
Yeah, separately we did this. And we passed and moved on, and I think Greg, you did some TV work.
Did a little bit of TV work, yeah.
And I did nothing. I went around the streets taking photographs, but I didn't really have an aim as to what I wanted to do. I certainly knew I didn't want to do any like studio recording or anything like that, because I really didn't want to be stuck in a dark box. Shit, what have I done? But it was maybe a year later we decided, because we were both kind of poor-ish at the time, hey, let's get our camera gear together and start finding some work. And I think originally we worked on a very cheap feature film, pretty much no budget. We didn't get paid for it. It was just kind of a cool experience. And then after that, we just kind of, I got engaged, and I was like, hey, there's no cool wedding videographers out there. Let's start doing it in kind of this American style that we had kind of seen. And we started doing it, and it kind of worked out.
It was sort of, we chose to go into the wedding market. To begin with, we'd said no to weddings. We were like, no,
too much
pressure, and we thought that the end product was it had to be quite stale and boring. But then when we realised what was sort of kicking off in America, it was like, all right, you can be a bit more creative and cinematic with weddings. Yeah. So we chose to do that and go into that industry.
Yeah. But we didn't work alongside anyone who we would describe as arseholes. was the photographer that you worked with, was he an arsehole to you on the day? Or
not on the day, but when I put I had a kind of, fledgling clunky website, and I put stuff up from that wedding, and I emailed him to say, fully transparent, I've put this stuff up on my wedding, this is the stuff that I took. If you would like, I don't know what you think of it, but if you would like, ever need an assistant, this is what I did with that day. And within half an hour, he'd got back to me, threatened to sue me, and he'd called the bride, threatening all kinds of shit with her.
What? That's madness.
Which she just shrugged. She just shrugged off and ignored.
Yeah.
But he really kicked off about it.
That definitely falls into arseholery.
That goes beyond just being a
That's
dick
more
on the
than I
day.
expected. I was expecting just like odd looks on the day or stuff like that.
No. It was kind
Jesus.
it was all after the fact. I think I was a member of the BIPP. Then he threatened to call them and I guess to get me kicked out. He went ballistic.
Damn. Well, sorry you had that experience.
Name, but I actually genuinely can't remember it.
Okay. So I'm actually wondering, the fact that you are a writer, is that why you now focus on storytelling in your images?
Yeah, I think it's not a conscious decision. I think it's just what I'm drawn to. I think. We always talked about, finding your style, looking for your style. And I think you can't really look for a style. It just has to be what your photos start to look like to you or to other people after you've kind of like settled in.
Yeah.
I guess it's just, I'm interested in mood and emotion and people. And I guess that was particularly true when I started out. If there was maybe, a bridesmaid looking melancholy on her own, that would be, an interesting shot. I think, these days I'm kind of like, I'm quite, I like the shapes. I like the composition of faces, but
Yeah.
so I'm looking for maybe more things within one frame. But essentially, yeah, it's I want to sort of tell stories from the day, but I want to do it in a way that, while it looks like it was worth getting me to photograph someone's wedding, it also looks like snapshots, kind of like high-end snapshots.
Yeah. And would you take, I mean, I'm assuming you would take that image of, the bride there alone, because we had a very similar moment. I think it was last year, and one of the bridesmaids, a key figure in the wedding, was late, and they couldn't move ahead, and the church, the bride just waited in the church, not basement, but the first floor. The church was kind of up above, and she was just in this hallway, sitting right in the middle of the room, and chairs stacked up, and I was like, fuck, she looks so sad right now. And I took a video of it. It didn't make it into the film, but I just thought, man, this is a moment right here, and I want to capture it. I didn't think it would go in the film, but I just thought it's not a stereotypical wedding shot that So I'm assuming you would have done the same.
Yeah, I would take it, and I think I probably would deliver it, but it's one photo or a couple of photos in a mix of 400 or 500 that that's not going to derail their experience of that collection of images. Yeah, but I can see why you would not necessarily feature it, because it's quite a dip in tone, isn't it? For that.
Yeah, I think if the couple had. It was quite a small package from us, so I only had less than 10 minutes, which actually seems like a lot, but less than 10 minutes to get what was quite a busy wedding with lots of different things happening, and I just couldn't fit that vibe into the wedding, because nothing else around it just I couldn't balance that sort of tone with anything else that happened.
It would be jarring, wouldn't it? Rather than kind of like a flow.
Yeah. So, I absolutely would have done that. I put things in weddings that I put things in our films that really don't belong in a wedding film, but I like them. So yeah. Quick question though. A lot of people describe themselves as storytellers, and when you ask them, they come at it like a cinematographer's point of view storyteller. I mean, we know a lot of filmmakers, so that makes sense, but I mean photographers. And they'll talk about their gallery being storytelling. Now, as a photographer, it's really interesting to think, they're talking about the final layout. That's cool. Yeah. But your images and a few others that I really enjoy have this kind of like, I'm going to tell a story in a frame. Is that what you attempt to do? Tell a story in a frame? Or do you think, hey, I'm a storyteller, so things as I display them need to have a sort of cinema quality to them?
I mean,
if that makes sense.
You've naturally got the narrative arc of the day simply by photographing throughout the day. So that's the storytelling almost taken care of itself simply by it being the event that it is. Yeah. So within that, I think, what I want to be doing is, looking for. I'm not a fan of. I think there's some wedding photography which is basically portraiture, throughout the day, headshots or relative close-ups of just one person, and I don't find that particularly interesting. I think it's I noticed the sort of shift as I did this and I went along. I think I did do that at the beginning. Maybe just have some, one or two people in the frame. But I think the more you do it, the more your brain kind of goes, okay, tick those boxes. Now what's going off in, the top hand corner, and let's bring that in, and let's see what's going on around the person that may be the focus, but they may, you contextualize them more by going a little bit wider, and that creates that sense of story in a frame.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, your images are very busy, and I like that. They're not just like, I'm assuming you do some portraiture of just like a person, but a lot of your work is so busy.
Yeah.
It's
just, I think, naturally what I've gravitated towards. It's, I shoot wide, I'm shooting, 28 to 24 mil. I'm shooting, sort of around f8, something like that. So there's lots of it's, in detail, because I do think that the people in the background quite often, I think if you frame it right, people can, the people looking at the image know what the central focus is. But then, the elements around the sides, you can have, someone smiling in the foreground and, someone trying to catch their child from, running out of the, in the background. And, it's just it just creates an energy and a sense of a moment that you wouldn't get by going too close in.
Yeah. Do you know what I like? So, this isn't anything to do with photography, but I love people watching. If I'm like in a cafe or having a coffee, I'll look out the window and I'll just watch some people for a little bit. I really enjoy doing that with some of your images because you shoot at f8. You can see the people in the background, so I'm like, what's he doing over there? And then I'm looking through. Oh, there he is again. What's he doing now? Oh, he's come closer. Oh, he's wanting some of this action here. And it's just really interesting to see, because you, like, so many people shoot with such a shallow depth of field. It's so interesting that you use your flash to separate the distance to and from the camera rather than focus. So it's really cool.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yes. What we just said. Yeah. I just. I like a busy image. I like. People. Buyers will sort of say. When you turn up, oh, sorry about this, but it's going to be really chaotic. It's it's going to be a busy house, and I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I want chaos.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of words so far in this episode used to describe styles of photography. But how would you describe your style?
I guess I describe it as, it varies, kind of between high-end snapshot, which I've kind of referred to just a little bit earlier, to, I guess, editorial influence documentary. Nothing is set up, nothing's posed, but I do want everyone in the frame to look as good as I can possibly make them.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I picture kind of Vogue Tatler kind of images, but with anyone who is in front of the camera.
I love that. Actually, I'm gonna read something that I think is on your about page. I can't remember.
Okay.
And you wrote, and I might butcher this, so I apologize if I do. I do believe that wedding photography should always be about the individual couple, not the kind of one-style-fits-all approach. Your wedding photos should look like a wedding day, your wedding day, not an imposed style on your day by the photographer, so that it starts to resemble generic wedding photos that could be interchanged by a simple Google search. Why do you think a lot of imagery is generic?
I think because it's safe. It's safe for the photographer and it's safe for the bride and groom. I mean, there is a lot of pressure on the day, to deliver a good set of images. And I guess, the simplest way is to maybe work at a venue, consistently and know where there is certain light and certain shapes of hedges or, tall trees that people can look small next to. But it's a safe, easy way of shooting. And I think that does a disservice to the couple. Mm-hmm. Although, I mean, it depends on the couple, because, I'll get people making inquiry and saying, have you shot at this venue before? As if that is crucial to, to the day. And it's like, I would honestly rather not have shot at a venue before, because that way you're completely fresh to it. If I've shot at a venue a few times, I start to feel like it's slightly Groundhog Day. And, I think then that's when you become a little bit stale, because you're just, you can't help but kind of going, well, the last time I was here, I got a good shot there. Wouldn't it be good if I did that? But you are then taken out of the spontaneity of the day for, rehearsed images almost.
Yeah. I find it's even the next step is when you go to a wedding and the owner of the venue or the planner is like, oh, hey, again, don't forget to get that shot coming down the stairs. And you're like, oh, no, please.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much if an events organizer tells me that most photographers like to shoot the couple on these stairs, I just won't shoot on those stairs.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Just get really contrary about it.
Yeah. You don't want to miss the shot, though. Come on, Nick. The shot. Come on. So you like going into preps and then someone says it's busy and you're like, yeah, that's great. I love all that kind of energy. What is your approach then to a wedding?
It's basically to turn up, shoot it, and go home. I mean, I kind of, I don't really even ask for an itinerary, because I don't kind of see the point. I'm there, I'm taking photographs. If I'm told something happens at 5:00, I'm not going to miss it, because I'm going to be still going to be there at 5:00.
Yeah.
And I think the less prescriptive, I can be, or the remit can be, the better results you're going to get, because it's just the best thing that anyone can say to me is, we've got you because we really like what you do. Now do what you do.
Yeah.
And that's it. If someone sends me, spreadsheet of images they want, then that makes me anxious.
Hello. At the beginning of the podcast, I introduced the fact that we've got two sponsors of the show, with Jack, which is Ashley Baxter, who funnily enough works in this very room, and 210co, which, if you're wondering, is Greg and I. That's our second business. That's right, we're sponsoring our own podcast. I don't know why. No, we do know why. We're looking for more members to join our creative space.
Yeah, if you want to get out of your home office and come and join some other friendly faces in Glasgow, it's quite a niche advert here because it's Glasgow specific. If you're visiting Glasgow or live nearby, you can come and work here. We've got permanent desks, we've got communal desks, hot desks, all the desks. I sound like one of those...
We've got a podcast desk too.
I sound like one of those ads, like, we've got this and this and this.
We've also got a kitchen with a fridge. It's got beers in it. It's got free beers. You can have beers for nothing.
Yeah, so you better move quick or else they'll be drunk.
They've been in there for so long.
They're going down quite fast, actually.
Are they?
Tom must be hammering them.
This is the 210co ad, and I'm butting in because last week I gave Greg a beer.
Oh.
Brewdog layer cake.
You're just giving me your Advent beer.
Well, now I've got another gift for you, Greg.
Oh, another beer you don't like?
Another Brewdog. Here's your beer number 2.
Give me that.
See, this is
Jesus,
why...
it's cold.
It's got, I put it in the fridge.
Oh,
This
thanks.
is why you should be in the Two Tenko office, because I will give you my beers for free.
You can get rejected beers.
You can get my rejected beers. Anyway, back to the normal ad. Anyway, if you want to join us at Two Tenko, what's the address, Greg?
We're on Washington Street in Glasgow. So
right.
you can hit us up on... Oh, that's horrible. On Instagram, 210co_. Or just reach out to Cinemate on Instagram and we'll let you know the information.
That's right. And if you want to be a better sponsor of the podcast in future episodes, you can do. Just write to Cinemate on Instagram or Facebook. Cinemate Films. Cinemate Films on Facebook. Cinemate Films on Instagram. Let us know. That's absolutely fine. We'll be more professional when we do it to your brand, I promise. Anyway,
Back to the podcast.
back to the podcast. Funnily enough, just before this podcast started recording, when we came in, Greg and I refreshed our minds to the next shoot that we've got coming up, because the bride had sent over a selection of different styles of videos, and I'm thinking, right, I usually just do what I do. And I'm looking at this stuff, and it just so happens that it seems to be doing what I already do, but I'll do it in my kind of way. So I'm less anxious. But when all those came in, I wasn't too happy about it. I was more nervous.
It was the whole plight thing where they say, "Oh, I've got a bunch of like a mood board or images or stuff that I've got. Do you want me to send them over to give you some ideas of what we like?" And it's like, yeah, sure. Won't change much.
It won't change much. I mean, I a lot of it was like they loved like Wes Anderson style framing, or a lot of handheld. Strangely, a lot of handheld. So Wes Anderson is kind of famous for like doing his locked off center framed,
Very stylized, very sort of uniform, and
exactly, with a very specific color palette and all that kind of stuff. And then in between that, she'd send over like a black and white, high energy, handheld styled shoot, and I'm like, right, cool. I'm just trying to think where can I do this kind of thing, and I think that is I think that I don't find weddings stressful. But the stress can be the sort of managing expectations. I did a wedding in Iceland a couple of years ago, and the bride did actually. She said, "I really like your journalistic Wes Anderson approach." And I was like, well, Wes Anderson is the opposite of journalistic, so which are you after? That was
Quite often they just have no idea what they're after. They just they like what they see, and they don't know how to verbalize that.
Yeah. I mean, you would hope that basically the fact that I guess it also slightly surprises me when they do come in and say this is what we like, because you figure that they've employed you because you're what they like.
Yeah.
But doesn't always seem to be the case.
Yeah. And all we're really doing is just showing up and moving a camera about in a certain way at certain points of the day. That's it.
Yeah.
Anything regarding style or color or even light to the majority of the day, we have no control over. So I'm looking at all these things, and they're different styles, and some of them are black and white, some of them are like, whoa, high, there's glitter everywhere, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm only going to look at this element that I can focus on, and then the rest will just be what it is.
Yeah.
But hey ho.
Let's talk a wee bit about gear, because you mentioned that you shoot like a 28 to 24 mil. So that's when you think of it, that's a bit wider than what most sort of people would expect from a wedding photographer. It's like 35, 85 maybe. So did you take a while to find that you preferred that wider lens?
It took a while when I started picking up the camera again. I think when I first bought a camera when I was working sort of like street art time, and it was a hobby camera, but because there was money, floating about in that world, I was sort of talked into buying a Canon 5D Mark I as my hobby camera, which is a fairly high end hobby camera.
Yeah, that is one hell of a hobby camera.
Yeah, yeah. And that came with a 24-70. And I think when I started, I was probably shooting around the 50mm, 35mm mark. Mm-hmm. And I think the first time I think I just put on a dedicated 35mm lens, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. There's too much space in the frame,
Yeah,
and it took a while for my brain to click in, and then once it did, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Mm-hmm. It's not just for someone's center of a frame. It's to create a kind of like to photograph something to be much more of a tableau. And from 35, I went to 28, and that they are really my go-to focal lengths between those two now. One of my cameras is a Leica Q, which is a fixed 28mm lens, so that it can only be that.
Yeah. Okay. Does the fact that it's fixed help? Does your mind think in those kind of prime numbers, or like you mentioned starting with a zoom, but then you were going to the 50 end, you were going to. Yeah. I think I was fairly. I think when I started, people were a little bit, leery of the quality of a zoom sharpness across the range. Yeah.
So I sort of moved to working with primes, which obviously you can only zoom in with a prime by walking up closer. I think that was a good discipline. These days zooms are much sharper, and you can just bung one on the camera and be fairly safe at whatever end you're shooting. But it's just I just like to go wider. I'll only be on around the. I've got an 85, but it's really it's a 1.2, so it's low light. If it's really dusky or low lit, and I don't yet want to put a flash on because I don't feel that the mood is right for it, then I'll put an 85 on, but I'll stand way back and try and get that to be a 50, but just I'm less intrusive using it.
Okay. Would you do that at like the more focused parts of the day, like ceremony or speeches, first dance maybe, or would you tend to go wider for those type of moments? I'm still going wider because I think speech is certainly you want the reactions of people around, not just the person standing up. With their mouth in various states of being open and closed. That's two shots. If you can get a reaction around it, it's a much more interesting photo. Yes, right, okay. I've always thought, how do photographers choose that moment? Because I've got 25 frames to pick from per second, and I even struggle, even though I've captured them all, which mouth position is the best? How do you and there, by the way, there's some really interesting things that people do with their mouth. But I still don't even know. So that's helpful. Reactions, good, cool.
I think if you can have like 4 or 5 people in the shot with 4 or 5 varying mouth positions, then you're not going to be so het up on the one person looking wrong. I think you're photographing mood and emotion as much as you're photographing someone's face, and that's what a wider focal length gives you.
Yeah. Would you worry if, I don't know, say you're shooting a top table and someone's giving a good speech, all the faces are laughing, but then there's one who's like, I don't know, taking a sip of wine, has missed his mouth, something going completely wrong. Would you think, oh shit, I need to Photoshop that? If you do Photoshop, or would you say, no, that is actually a moment right there, and I'm so happy I caught that?
Exactly, I would love that.
Yeah. Okay.
That sounded great when you described it.
I know it did sound great. I meant I meant something more disastrous, because that does sound funny. But yeah, okay.
I mean, I've shot. I shot at a wedding a few years ago now, where one of the they had a bouncy castle, and it got quite late. Everyone was, I think it was about 10 o'clock. Everyone had been drinking. One of the guests did a, somersault on the bouncy castle and broke his nose.
I'm about to right. Okay, so I'm about to ask you about this photograph. It's actually my next question, because it's one of my favorite photographs that you've taken, and I titled it "Bloody Nose," and I wanted to know the story about it. So please tell me more about this photograph. And listeners, if you haven't seen this photograph, go try and find it. Actually, is it on your Instagram, Nick?
I think it's on my landing page, so you don't have to search too hard for it.
That's right. I love this image, and it was kind of what I was asking you kind of before about when you would take an image or when you wouldn't. And I just thought, I bet you a lot of people just wouldn't take that shot. So
yeah. Okay.
So there's a bouncy castle. Tell me more.
Well, I mean, it was still one of my favourite weddings. It was kind of it was a very, I like chaos. This was a chaotic wedding. I think there was an ambulance was called out twice, neither of which was for the guy with the broken nose.
Damn!
It was at the groom's parents' place on the outskirts of Essex, sort of like the picturesque bit of it, and they had a kind of a little, I guess, boating lake in the garden. Someone fell into that in full on, their whole suit went right under. Someone was called for, I think one of the bridesmaids collapsed with pneumonia, and the ambulance was called for her. An ambulance was called for someone else later on the day. I can't remember why. So it was kind of had that just kind of like crazy element to it. I think the one time that I've really been late for the sort of getting ready stuff was because the taxi driver couldn't find this kind of like old converted windmill that they were getting ready in. I turned up late, and they didn't even notice because they were running even later. And I think the bride was at least 2 hours late for her ceremony, which luckily was in the garden of this place. So it was just like lots of confused people sitting on hay bales, wondering when she was going to turn up, which she did eventually. It was just a brilliantly fun wedding. And so I think when someone did, I went, I was doing the dancing stuff. I think I'd probably got enough dancing at that point to take a break, wandered off. And there was a guy sitting there, pinching the bridge of his nose with blood trickling onto his shirt. I think, I can't remember I think I just walked straight up and took the photo. And just, and just kind of like laughed. And I think I could tell. You know what? I don't think I knew what their mood was before I took the photo. So I took it first of all, and then smiled and clocked that they were they were amused that I'd taken it. So it clearly wasn't like this discarded moment of, could you leave us alone? This guy's in pain. It was just kind of like, yeah, he's been a dick. He's broken his nose, and you've got the photo. That's amazing. I mean, in fact, they actually the guy that broke his nose and his girlfriend, a year later, they booked me to shoot their wedding, so they clearly liked it.
Oh, that's amazing, Greg. Have you checked out this image?
I've not seen this exact one.
I'm trying to find it now. See, this is actually the joys.
Is that it?
That is
Yeah.
it. We've this is the third episode where we've introduced video into the podcast, so I can actually are you okay with me showing it on the podcast video, Nick?
Yeah,
are you okay
course.
with me showing that image? Okay.
Yeah.
But Greg, I mean that's hilarious, and I just love the reaction of the woman in the background. She's like, "Oh my God, you're taking a picture of this? What the fuck?" Or that's what I imagine she's saying in her head.
Yeah. It was exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely hilarious. But the fact is, you're looking into like I said before, you look into the background, and you're like, "There's nothing there. So what the hell's happened to him?" So I'm so glad you filled in the story, because the guy on the right, he's I think he's trying to avoid the photograph. He looks guilty.
Possibly.
He looks guilty, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. Maybe there was a fight or a dance move gone wrong or something.
I shouldn't have mentioned the bouncy castle, should I? That's kind of killed it. Yeah, it was a fight. There was a brawl.
I just thought of like someone doing the worm, but just not doing it right. Yeah. It's amazing. I asked earlier about your approach to a wedding, only because a lot of photographers kind of take on this multiple hat role on a wedding day, and I myself have started to put the camera down a lot more, and the first thing I'll do is mingle as if I'm a guest. Like I will literally talk to everyone, whereas maybe before I wouldn't bother, because I kind of thought, oh well, I'm just here to video the wedding. I'm not, people just see me as a supplier, so that's fine. But no one at a wedding knows who anyone else is. Maybe if it's like a small wedding or whatever, but a lot of people are there and they don't have a clue. So I have just started to just randomly go up to guests and just chat away as if I'm a guest. Yeah. And you get some great, like once they realize, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but once they realize that you're just a person, you are far more likely for them to open up in front of you, and they allow you to get in a little bit closer. Like I am with you, I like to shoot quite wide. But I would go up to them and put my camera up, and as soon as they do, they know, hey, it's Simon, and they'll start doing something.
It breaks down the wall.
It breaks down the wall, and I love that. And it all comes down to the fact that they see you not as a video person or not as a camera person, and they know your name or whatever it is. You're just a person. Yeah. Do you take that kind of mentality, or are you again? I mean, I know you touched on this with the other question, but are you quite open at weddings, or are you quite standoffish? You're just a photographer and wild things are happening?
I think you've got to strike a balance. I mean, you kind of, you want to put people at ease, but if I turn up, say for the bride getting ready, some kind of stuff, you don't want to be the sort of like weird, slightly creepy guy in the background who's just taking photos. So you do, I think, need to join in the conversation and crack jokes. But then you don't want to be kind of like, oh, look at me I'm the amusing, entertaining photographer, and actually get in their way of their morning.
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to. I
always kind of feel you need to kind of like meet people's eye with a big smile whilst at the same time being invisible. It's it's kind of you've just got to find the balance. I mean, I'm quite happy to chat with people throughout the day if they come up to me. I probably won't go up to them, but yeah, I definitely. I mean, I know what you mean about getting to know people and putting them at ease. I mean, if I'm ever sat down for the meal with guests, I actually find that very useful, because they kind of like welcome you in, get to know you, will point things out to you. You're also sitting at a table, so you're closer to the action.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, I mean, alcohol is a great leveler. You know, people that I always think people that spent the entire day trying to avoid the camera, you know, come 9 or 10 o'clock when that tipping point of booze has kicked in, will be the first ones to jump in front of you with the flash.
Yeah, that is so true. Actually,
there was definitely a couple of people like that at the last wedding we shot. Like they were dancing in front of they were looking out for they were like, "Where's the camera?" Wow, dancing in front of the camera on purpose.
Yeah. Man. Well, actually, when we were speaking about having the light and seeing the mood change, there was a shot, and so we were hired to stay the whole night, and obviously that is a lot of us during the dancing. So we were going away a lot, but we were coming back throughout the night. But we're trying not to do that. But there was one gentleman who I saw the turn. While editing. It was on Greg's camera. And they were doing Greg had turned the camera. They were doing something in a big group, and suddenly the guy kind of in the middle, he's like this, and he just stays giving Greg the finger, like for ages. And you know what? Greg holds the shot. He holds the shot for ages. And I was like, "Oh damn! Oh, I don't know what to do with that shot." But it's so funny because you do see the change.
Yeah, you do. So what did you do with the shot?
I actually
made the edit, didn't it?
Did it? I can't remember. I would need to go back. It was we just had so much. There was so much. There was dancers and hula hoop performers and bands. I just couldn't fit it in, and I had already extended the length of the film to fit it all in, which I do anyway. I edit too long. I'm sorry. I just do. I don't mind. I don't mind holding a shot for like 20 seconds to allow time to pass before something happens.
But maybe not a shot like that.
But maybe not a shot like that. That whole shot. Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. Also, Greg, the gentleman tried to get access to the platform. So later on, he was just a little bit boisterous, and there was a bit of a fight. So I just thought, I'm not going to put that in. I'm not going to allude to the potential fight. So I don't think it went in the film, but I did enjoy watching it. But yeah,
I think the kind of the rule of thumb has to be take the photo and then kind of gauge. I've photographed. There's one time, again, a few years ago, one of the guests got pretty drunk, was sitting on the arm of a sofa, and then just fell right off it. And my first reaction was to photograph it because it's a moment. But at that point in the evening, you're photographing it with flash, which draws attention to you. The boyfriend got very defensive and kind of was a bit aggro and fronted up to me and said, "Delete that now." And you know what? I just said to him, "Look, I'm not being paid to embarrass people. I took the shot because it could have potentially been one that I didn't want to miss.
Yeah.
But if you don't want it to go into the mix, then I won't put it in the mix."
That's interesting that you brought that incident up, because one of our next guests on the podcast is a woman called Kim Williams, who recently just posted on social media about situations that she's gotten into with men. The post kind of got viral, and rightfully so. It was quite an honest and open portrayal to many of the things that she's encountered as a female photographer that men have put her through. So I'm just wondering, have you yourself, obviously you're not a woman photographer, but in that instant, there was an angry male gentleman in your face. Do you?
Yeah.
What would you do in that situation?
It doesn't happen often. I mean, I think it was probably only really happened that one time, which is why I brought it up. I think, I mean, he was very kind of aggressive, and so I think I put my back up, and I was kind of like, I stood my ground, and I just kind of felt like, because my headspace was just, it was a fun party. Let's capture the photos. So I didn't really back down, and I stood up to him, and I probably maybe gave as good as I got, but then I walked away, and thought, you know what, he was just, he's been drinking all day. He was just defending, his girlfriend. So I circled back and I went back to him and said, look, I'm sorry that I, flared up back at you. And then that's when I said, look, genuinely not here to embarrass anyone. That photo won't get seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, no, I think women wedding photographers have to put up with no end of shit from lecherous kind of like drunken guests. I've heard, I've heard stories like that from all my female wedding photographer friends.
Yes, us too. And when I saw that post, I was instantly just, I just had to get her on the podcast because... that'd be a really interesting podcast because people do need to know that's what, that happens. Yeah, I've lost my train of thought because I've lost my train of thought. But I'm very much looking forward to getting Kim on and talking about this and giving people the opportunity to think more about how they can avoid situations, how other suppliers can avoid these kind of situations on their behalf, how to deal with these kind of situations because it happens way too much. Yeah. Anyway, that's for another podcaster. Yes. But yeah, I'm not always on the ball energy level wise. So when we were talking about how I'm talking to guests all the time, sometimes sometimes I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you can have off days and you turn up and you're like, I just don't want to be talking to anyone.
I mean, I still do. I still do, but I'm not as.
It's hard. Yeah, sometimes you have to force yourself to get into that sort of spirit.
Yeah,
but how do you? So when you're doing more of this sort of portrait session with the couple, how do you interact with them to get sort of your style of work?
Basically just chat to them. A lot of the times, people are going to say to you, I'm one of these people that's really uncomfortable in front of the camera. And you can be like, everyone is uncomfortable in front of the camera. There's about 5% of people that aren't. And the reason that we pay models the big bucks is because they're weird creatures who can stand in front of the camera and look good. So I try and really mostly distract them from the fact that it is a couple, it is just the three of us, and get them to talk about, talk about whatever, but also let them know that this is kind of possibly the one moment in the day that they get to chat to each other and decompress. So all I'll do is kind of encourage them to chat, really ignore me, but I'll be, we'll be walking around and I'll look for a photogenic background, find one, just plonk them there, and then, photograph them interacting, because I think that's much more interesting. It's for them, it's about them. So them looking at each other is much more interesting to me than people looking at the camera and feeling awkward. So I don't pose people at all.
Very cool. You would work well with many videographers because it's kind of downtime when they're just looking at the photographer's camera. It's not much we can do with that. Which is fine. That's not every style is different. So I'm not attacking Any photographers out there that do that, that's fine. Sometimes I'll get them. Sometimes I will get the couple to look. Well, it's usually one-on-one. If I'm doing a portrait, I'll get the bride or groom to look right into my lens because it's quite. It's not something that video does a lot. So
yeah.
But
no,
it's
certainly, if they glance your way, you take the photo, and I guess for me, it's about not being prescriptive. It's about not turning up with preconceived ideas for the day. If people want, they'll say to me, "Oh, there's no group shots on your website. Do you do them?" And of course I will, because they're paying me. I'm not going to be precious about it. They're paying for the day, but it's just that the group shots won't really be featured on my website because one group shot is much of a muchness with any other group shot.
Yeah. And your photographs have so many people in them already. Like they're practically group shots in and of themselves.
Yeah. That is true.
I could just imagine a couple being like, "Oh, I really like that bleeding nose shot. Can we do something like that?" Right? Okay.
Yeah. Either hire a bouncy castle or just punch your friend in the face.
Punch your friend. You know what? I'm sure there's always going to be someone willing to punch someone in the face. I want to talk a little bit about equipment. And obviously we say quite often that equipment isn't important. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's not. Although earlier when you were talking about how you couldn't get your mind around a 35 and you had to change your thinking, I suppose there is a degree of importance that equipment does have for creatives, because it does... I'm brain farting here. It does allow you to change and have a different approach to taking an image, right? Yeah.
I mean, equipment isn't fun. It isn't fundamental. The quality of the equipment isn't fundamental, but you do need equipment, because if you turn up to a wedding with no equipment, that goes down really badly.
Yeah. So what's in your bag?
I was going to say about equipment. I think the technical perfection is the least interesting thing about a photo. When I think people can get a bit obsessed with, the latest gadget and the latest thing and how high end. I think what you should be first and foremost looking to capture is the mood and emotion. And you'll see. Friend of mine, Naomi Goggin, who shoots a lot on film, quite a bit of, quite a number of her shots will be slightly soft because, they're it's manual focus and you can't always get there, but they do look beautiful. So yeah, equipment is, I think for me, so you asked me what's in my bag. I shoot with good old fashioned big clunky Canon 5D Mark IIIs. I've got two of those, two bodies, and then I've got the Leica Q as the other. So I guess the second or third camera. The Leica Qs are amazing in daylight, but actually quite poor in low light for something that costs as much as it does. The Canon is much better in low light. So yeah, I'm kind of, and I haven't gone over to sort of mirrorless in the way that a lot of people have, because these cameras are still working, and I do think that you can get to focused on tech to the detriment of, just capturing the day as it is.
Yeah. Nobody's coming to you saying, "Oh, the resolution of your photo," or it's just not high enough. You got a better camera. No. They're not coming to say that. So why upgrade?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm terrible for looking at gear. Canon just announced the R5C. I've been into that. I've been like, ooh, very cool. It's like the camera that I wanted, but now it's got no record limits and all that kind of stuff. I'm like,
yeah.
Why do I do this to myself? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I can get, I get getting geeky when you need a new camera, but I haven't needed a new camera for a long time. So,
yeah,
I mean, if I will get asked, what would you recommend as, a good medium level camera or a good starter camera, and I just won't have any idea because I'm not looking.
Yeah,
yeah, I love that. My wife asks me questions all the time about software and stuff, and I'm like, I can't help you. I've been editing with the same software for 10 years. I'm sorry. Like, I thought you were a professional. Professionals just work with what they've got. Like,
yeah.
I don't know the whole industry and all the software and.
Yeah, it's like somebody asked me a few months back, like, oh, what you got any recommendations for like a video editing software I can use just to put some fun clips from my phone together? And I was like, no, because the one I use is like a subscription for an expensive professional gear. I don't know what the entry level basic thing is.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And I'm very untechy. When I got the Leica, I basically had to phone. I phoned up because they're basically like computers, aren't they? And it's daunting. I think they only need to do ISO, shutter speed, aperture. I don't get why there's all these kind of like bells and whistles around them. But when I got the Leica, I phoned my friend up and said, "What are your settings?" and then just put it all on his settings.
Fair enough. Yeah, I remember getting the Lumix S5 and having been a Canon shooter. It took me a long time going through all the menus and setting everything, and I was like, oh man, I just wish it was just as easy as turn it on and shoot. I hate all the tech. I hate it all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm addicted. I just feel sorry for camera manufacturers because like we're saying, oh, just make it more simple. It's fine, and then they take one element of it. So with the R5C, for example, they gave it all the bells and whistles, but they took out the IBIS, and everyone's like, how could you do this, Canon? It's like, oh, fucking hell, calm down. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. I just feel sorry for any camera manufacturer out there. You're never going to get it right. Anyway. I want to ask you more about your post-processing. Earlier when I was talking about the Glen Eagles shoot and talking about the photographer who was trying out a new style, I do remember when he showed me the back of his camera. And it wasn't the fact that this was a new style, I don't think. But seeing it ungraded, my instant reaction was, "Ooh, yikes! That's a rough one there." But then he processed them. The next day came back and he showed me them. And I was very, I'm just it just complemented the style very well, and it made it look like how it was supposed to look. And I know you're shooting raw. I know for dynamic range, you don't want to blow out the highlights and all the technical jargon. I know this. Yeah. I know, but and this is why people are scared to sell their raws. I completely understand that, but it just kind of blew my mind. So I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about your post processing? Is there a lot of it?
Yeah, I mean, I try and get it as close to, as close as I can in camera, and so there's the post processing, which is just Lightroom, is not massively different. I mean, there'll be times when you learn that if you need it on, if the light's going, and 5.6, 6.3, looks too dark in camera, but you want this, you want a depth to the image, then I will shoot it on that, knowing I can lighten it fairly substantially in post. But otherwise, I think for the most crisp, punchy image, you want to get it right in camera itself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my Lightroom production is basically, I've got a pre-made recipe for color and a pre-made recipe for black and white. So I'll import everything and then just give it all the color finish, and then go through each one by one. Go, does it stay that color? Does it go black and white? But there's no. That's what it really is. Do I crop in slightly? But I can't remember the last time I used Photoshop, or I don't get rid of anything.
Do you work alongside a lot of videographers, filmmakers? Because at 28, we're probably going to be in a lot of your shots.
Yeah, you are. I will say, look, dude, I'm shooting what, I guess for it's mostly the coming down the aisle shot, or actually if the second camera is stationed, within a frame in the ceremony, then I will either have a word or just kind of go, well, you know what, the bride and groom asked for, a couple of videographers. I can't do anything about the fact that one of the videographers is going to be in the frame. It's more, and then coming back, I suppose it's walking back down the aisle. I kind of go, we need to be side by side, so you're not in shot. But there's lots of workarounds, and years ago it was the videographer had those old could quite feasibly turn up with like an old outside broadcasting unit which they're lugging on their shoulder, and it's like a sort of surface to air missile.
He could kill you with that thing. Definitely kill you with that thing.
Exactly. Yeah. These days, everyone's shooting on the same small cameras, so it's not as intrusive as it used to be.
Wait, is that why photographers are always picking fights with video people? Do we need to move back to our deadly weapons? Is that what it is?
I think the relations between the two have chilled out a lot more since equipment became smaller.
Yeah, I think so.
We've talked a lot so far about your use of Flash, but we've not really talked about why you do use Flash and what it sort of adds to your work.
Yeah, I guess, when I started, I didn't use Flash at all. And I kind of prided myself on being able to, that would be throughout the night. So, I prided myself on using ambient light. But then after a while, you kind of think, well, you're then reliant on, for the good shots, you're reliant on people, who happen to step into a band of light, either from, the cones coming from the disco or whatever. And I found that whilst you could get beautifully atmospheric shots that a Flash might override, you're probably losing more images than you're gaining by sticking to that structure. So at that point, and I think that it was around that point I discovered Larry Fink, and that you could have drama and almost expressionist kind of shadows with using Flash. So you're not yes, I guess the Flash doesn't look like it does to the people on the dance floor, but it doesn't feel alien, I think, to people that see the image afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know a lot of photographers struggle with Flash. In fact, some of them even go as far as just to completely avoid Flash and just say they're a natural light photographer, which is fine, because that is a style and a look. But do you have any do you have any settings that you commonly use for the moments that you use the Flash? Any settings?
I like I say to you, I'm very untechy. I've kind of I just work out. work out, what looks good on the back of the camera. I guess I'll kind of shoot still high. I mean, the ISO will come down, I guess will be around 1200. Aperture will be at about, f8, f9. But it's just kind of what seems to be working,
Yeah.
I think where you make the choice is if there is quite a bit of, good light from, some light from the discos can be an absolute nightmare to work with, that kind of like spotty, dappled light where you're like, this is horrible. So then I'm gonna set my flash to overpower that light. So I don't deal with it. But if you've got kind of like rays of light shooting out from, light machines, is that what they're called? If that's kind of dramatic, then you want to turn up your ISO and then turn down the flash so that it's almost more fill flash, and you're not losing those kind of like those kind of like sprays of light behind them, which look really effective.
Cool. So when you're testing out your settings, do you just find a quiet part of the day and just be like, click, no, that doesn't look good, adjust, click? Like, because obviously we only work with constant light, so flash is a completely different beast. So when you're saying you're not technical, I'm like, I thought flash was a very technical thing. So
yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm not. I mean, there are there are photographers that will have 3 different flashes up on tripods around the room, and will use those as a backlight and a foreground light, and that always seems to me like a dizzying world of pain. I've literally got one flash. It's on the camera, and I'm pointing it at who I want to be photographing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a wonderful, long conversation. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Where can people find you online?
So online, it's nicktuckerphotography.com. And then Instagram is Nick Tucker Photo. I think they're the main places to get me.
Awesome. Listeners, definitely go give Nick a follow and definitely check out some of his work because I told you to. Ha, there. People can find us at cinematefilms.co.uk, on Instagram and Facebook at /cinematefilms. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, and if you did, like I've said a million times already on this podcast and every podcast that we do, you can follow us you can subscribe to us on Patreon. Thank you. At patreon.com/perspective by Cinemate. For as little as £1, you can support the podcast, and for the price of a coffee every month, you can get access to our Q&As, and any bonus content will be available there. So, yes. If you don't have any money to give, that's absolutely fine. Enjoy the free content. You can subscribe to the podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts worldwide. If we could ask you to leave a review, I would love you. However,
in the meantime,
enjoy your life. You hit that bloody early. Yeah.
What have I told you about pressing the button?
Sorry. I've got one job.
I was going to give you some mawams, but now no more. That's it. No more treats for you.